Shalom and good evening. This is TV7 Israel News, broadcasting to you from Jerusalem. And in today's top stories, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterates his call on the international community to join forces in the battle against terrorism, which he refers to as the forces of barbarism, in order for the world to seize the future. The United Nations Human Rights Council calls for an end of Israel's occupation of what they refer to as Palestinian territories, claiming it would benefit both Israelis and Palestinians following 50 years of hostility, while the United States demands from the Council to reform its biased attitude toward Israel to allow the world body to re-establish its credibility. Israel approves blueprints for a new Jewish settlement in the West Bank, the first such decision in more than 2 decades, as well as a decision to construct an additional 1,800 housing units in already existing Jewish settlements. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu welcomed to Jerusalem his Ethiopian counterpart, Minister Desalegn, for the first state visit by an African leader to the Jewish state. During a joint press conference, Prime Minister Desalegn declared that his state visit indicates the return of Africa to Israel.
Now, upon your visit to Africa, and I'm also very happy that you visit West Africa, ECOWAS recently, that as per your words, you are practically showing that you are coming back to Africa. My visit today is also to show that Africa is coming to Israel.
The Ethiopian leader also pointed to the fact that many of the terrorists threatening the world are rooted in both Africa and the Middle East, a reality that elevates the dire need for closer cooperation between African state and Israel. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu thanked his Ethiopian counterpart for being a key ingredient in Israel's return to Africa, a continent the Israeli leader said is on the rise, while reiterating his position that cooperation between Israel and the continent of Africa provides opportunities to seize the future.
I've just returned from ECOWAS. Israel is returning to Africa and Africa is returning to Israel. But it was made possible by your friendship and your leadership, along with several of your colleagues, and I deeply appreciate that. We view Africa as a continent on the rise. We understand that there are challenges. We have them too, but we sense that there is an opportunity to seize the future.
Prime Minister Netanyahu also joined his counterpart Desalegn in urging the international community to join forces in the battle against terrorism, which he referred to as barbarism.
Across the world, in Africa, in Europe, in London, just recently, in America and Asia, we have to fight together against these forces of barbarism because we must seize the future. We must advance modernity.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's recent visit to Africa, which took place earlier this week in the West African state of Liberia, had a primary objective to reduce in number the 54 African countries that represent the basis for the automatic majority against Israel in the United Nations and other international forums. Netanyahu declared the visit a success, pointing to the growing number of African states seeking to bolster their bilateral relations with the Jewish state. Now to Geneva, where the United Nations Human Rights Council convened in the Swiss city, where officials called for an end of Israel's occupations of what they referred to as Palestinian territories, claiming it would benefit both Israelis and Palestinians following 50 years of hostilities. The World Body's High Commissioner for Human Rights, Ziad Ra'ad al-Hussein, declared that the Palestinian people were marking a half a century of deep suffering under occupation imposed by military force, while also the Israelis deserve freedom as they have long endured unlawful attacks worthy of condemnation.
The Palestinians deserve freedom, as all peoples do. They deserve to bring up their children safe in their homes, on their land, exercising their rights in their state, free from this long and bitter occupation. The Israelis also deserve freedom, a different sort of freedom, for they have long had their state, but they too have suffered grievously. The Israeli people have long endured unlawful attacks against their own civilian population, attacks which are often vicious, in clear violation of international humanitarian law, and also worthy of condemnation. Israelis, too, need to be free from this violence, from any existential threat posed to them. The sine qua non for peace, the end of the occupation, must now be brought about, and soon. Maintain the occupation, and for both peoples there will only be a prolongation of immense pain, the endless flow of azaz and shivers, the weeping by loved ones for loved ones, the prayers, the curses, the hatreds and vengeance, the impossibility of a secure life for all. This can be ended.
In response to the comments by the High Commissioner for Human Rights, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Nikki Haley demanded that the Commission conducts an immediate reform to reestablish its credibility, considering its ongoing bias against Israel. Haley pointed to the fact that during the month of March alone, the UN Human Rights Council adopted 5 resolutions against the Jewish state, yet it had never considered a resolution on Venezuela, where the American top diplomat said the situation is rapidly deteriorating with serious human rights violations.
Being a member of this council is a privilege, and no country who is a human rights violator should be allowed a seat at the table. Finally, it's hard to accept that this council has never considered a resolution on Venezuela, and yet it adopted 5 biased resolutions in March against a single country, Israel. It is essential that this council address its chronic anti-Israel bias if it is to have any credibility.
Now back to Israel, where the military civil administration for government activities in the territories reportedly approved blueprints for a new Jewish settlement in the West Bank, the first such decision in more than 2 decades, as well as a decision to construct an additional 1,800 housing units in already existing Jewish settlements. The reported decision by the administration's planning committee followed a government decision in March to build a settlement which will be called Amichai, to house some 300 settlers evicted in February from the settlement of Amona. Israel's Supreme Court had ordered the removal of the Amona settlers after ruling that their homes were built illegally on privately owned Palestinian land, which led Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to pledge to rehouse them at a new site in the West Bank. According to reports, the administration's panel approved plans to build 102 homes at the Amichai site for the Amona settlers. Plans for another 1,800 dwellings in several existing settlements were also ratified. A spokeswoman for the civil administration declined to comment. Palestinian officials in the West Bank city of Ramallah immediately condemned the Israeli decision, saying that all of Israel's constructions on lands the Palestinians demand for the future state, including East Jerusalem, which they view as their future capital, are illegal, while accusing President Donald Trump's refusal to comment on Israel's building policy during his recent visit to the region as a trigger behind Israel's continued construction.
زيارة الرئيس ترامب إلى المنطقة وعدم حديثه عن الاستيطان الاستعماري تعتقد حكومة الاحتلال أنه يمكن أن يعطيها ضوءا أخضر في الاستمرار في بناء والتوسع الاستعماري الاستيطاني خارج إطار كل القوانين والشرعيات الدولية، ونحن كفلسطينيين موقفنا هو أن كل هذا الاستيطان الاستعماري هو غير شرعي وغير قانوني بما فيه مدينة القدس عاصمة دولة فلسطين.
Israel rejects the Palestinian claims for Jerusalem, declaring that the city will remain the undivided and eternal capital of the Jewish state, while emphasizing that the Jewish settlement blocks, which house some 500,000 Israelis, will remain under Israeli sovereignty under any final status agreement to the decades-old Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Thank you for joining us. Keep praying for the peace of Israel and the peace of Jerusalem. I'm Yair Pinto. Have a good evening, and we will see you again tomorrow at the same time.
In order to donate to TV7 Israel News, please follow these simple steps. First, press the Donate logo, located at the bottom left side of TV7 Israel News Facebook page, or on the Donate tab at the head of the page. Then insert the amount you'd like to donate, and fill in your credit card information. Just like this. And press Review Donation and continue. After reviewing your donation details, please press Donate to finalize your donation. That's it! Your donation is now complete, and an email with your donation details has been sent to your email address. You can also print your donation receipt by pressing the link here. Thank you for supporting TV7 Israel News.